Okay, today is November 20th. The time is 12:30, and we have a work-study session for the EDZ zone. And in the room participating is myself, Michael Buck, Commissioner from District 1. We have Commissioner Schroeder from District 2, and we have Jennifer Jones from our CDS department. And with that, I'll go ahead and let Jennifer kick it off for us.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Just to get started, I will let you know what has been done since our last work session, which I believe was last week, although it seems like a blur. So you will see a few maps in the room in front of you. The first map shows the entire county, and it does show 3 potential EDZ zone areas, west, central, and east. The use tables for each have been updated based on the feedback at the last work session. So we had some items in red that were kind of up for discussion, and we talked through those, and so I have updated those based on the discussion. I've also added to that map and in front of you a comparison list for each, and I know we're still discussing whether 3 is appropriate or 2 or 1, but just for comparison and discussion's sake, I have put that in front of you. The middle map is that western area of the county showing the current EDZ area, and it is zoomed in so that you can get a little bit better feel for actual areas. And then the map on the right, the map on the right is the potential eastern EDZ area, including Interstate 70 and Highway 24. This map has changed a little bit since your last work session. It includes a variety of sizing for the circles that you see on the map around Agate, around the Highway 86 interchange, around Simla, and around Matheson. And so I have a few labels on there so that you can see the different sizes. And we've also included a few different widths if you wanted to increase the actual corridor of the EDZ zone. And so there's a couple different widths shown on there as well. And then just to clarify one other thing, on this first map, there are in a hatched pattern with a teal outline, a potential additional EDZ areas that this map was shown at the last work session, and these were discussed at the last work session, but that's the one other thing I just wanted to point out there was potential additional EDZ areas. Those are not shown on the zoomed in map, but we can certainly draw those in if that's something that you all would like to speak about or have further discussion about. And then over here on this side of the room, I do have the existing zoning map and the existing list of EDZ uses just for your reference. And then we have the first or a couple work sessions ago map that showed the 2 areas, and at that time we had sort of a different land use table that we were working off of showing all of them. And so I just still have those for comparison's sake in case you want to refer back to those. And I'll turn it over to you all to see how I can help and how you would like to maybe look around and have some discussion.
I'd like to just introduce our county attorney, Lance Ingalls. He's also joining us today. Thank you, Lance. Good to see you. And
Yep, good to see you.
yeah, he is joining us remotely today, so thank you for that. So I'll go ahead and start real quick, Jennifer.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an idea, and I know you do, the EDZ West, how many are in that, how many are in each category? And then what was the total originally? I think it was 14. I didn't count them today, but EDZ West was going to be 14 uses.
I think there's 22 now. I did not count them all. My apologies. I will say that originally, I believe there were about 80. But you can,
21, just counted.
and so there's just a few more, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 or so more in central, and then that many more again, potentially in east. And again, that was based on the feedback I heard, but we can certainly make any tweaks if I got any of those notes wrong.
We had about 85 originally.
Yes, sir. 80 to 85? It's this whole list.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of just start with what I had the concerns with last time was kind of overcomplicating it a little bit by creating 3 zones. I would imagine that northwest corner of the county will be fairly similar at some point. So is 3 zone, that would be my question, would we need to have a central zone with additional uses? And that could be something that would be potentially added at a later date, that route, I think it's once Route 29, County Road 29, Dallas? Yeah. And 174, as the county builds out and some of those residential developments build out, it could be added at any time if we wanted to increase the EDZ zone. The initial discussion for this project was eliminating the EDZ zone. So I'm really not prepared, I'll just throw it out there, I'm really not prepared today or anytime in the near future, not that I won't ever be, but to increase the EDZ zone. It's counterintuitive to what we had set out to accomplish. I prefer community input. I prefer community meetings and letting the citizens have as much possible say in the process on what's developed near their homes or near their land. Not that someone can't come in and still develop that area or, apply through the normal process, but it's frustrating, I'm sure, for someone that all of a sudden was unaware of a project. It goes to the one notice, if they get a notice, to the BOCC with no additional input. So that would be why I would be against it. I understand on the other side of that coin why someone would say that makes sense, because those routes in the future will potentially be high-traffic routes. So I think that's why it was brought up and looked at that way. Dallas, do you have any input on that or thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I of course, the one that suggested the middle one, I think there's opportunity there to do exactly what the EDZ is designed to do and attract desirable businesses. And before it gets to the point that these businesses can't go in there, it gives a homeowner, landowner, an opportunity to put these very specific businesses in place before we get too grown up with development around and squeeze out commercial. And so we've said many times, we know what our problem is with the county is we don't have enough commercial, and to allow these to come in earlier rather than later, just I think is a benefit to the county. The additional uses are pretty, not that many differences there, but it would, having those extra corridors, we know it's going to become more high traffic areas. It just makes sense to extend that.
Yeah, because I know part of them are gravel roads now, fairly non-traveled, but they will be traveled at a later date. What are your thoughts on the central zone versus just having an east and west? Do you think it's necessary? We only have a few extra uses on the central than we do on the EDZ west. Do you think that's an additional benefit to have additional uses there, or do you think it all blend together?
To do a little bit of a compromise. I would be more than happy to just have two if we kept the list from EDZ Central to include the EDZ West. But to me, it was more of a phasing, trying to compromise from the western end to the eastern end of the county.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact opposite. The EDZ West cover the whole thing and be done, but that's just a thought there. Do you guys want to discuss the sizes of some of those routes?
Sure. Can we just touch one more thing on the
Sure.
central real quick? Because I think there are sort of two separate questions and issues. One is, does the board want a central EDZ, and then where is that distinction? And then question two, which is maybe related or maybe not, is does the board want to add County Road 174 and County Road 29 potentially also as an EDZ zone, whether that's, it's obviously an overlay, but whether that's to the west or to the central. So I just wanted to clarify, I think there's probably two separate questions there, and they can be answered either together or independently, not necessarily today, but,
Yeah.
so,
Well,
I
I think I expressed my opinion.
absolutely.
It wasn't a decision. I mean, I
Sure,
can still
no
make a
decisions.
decision, but I think I expressed my opinion on that. So, and I think Commissioner Schroeder expressed his opinion on it, and we haven't come to a decision or a consensus. But, and I think we can get Commissioner McDaniel in the room as well, and we need to get this finalized. We've had a number of work study sessions on it. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yes, sir. So we can
What was the other one? You said whether we
have the
include,
central.
have the central. My opinion on that is it's going to be growing so rapidly, I'm not sure there's much difference. It's all on that northwest side of the county. It's going to all be similar. I mean, you're going to have residential development there. It's going to be similar to what we currently have. I don't know if it's worth creating a third zone.
Right.
That would be my thought process on that.
Well, you just have space there now. You just look at that middle map. The County Road 29 to Kiowa Bennett is still relatively open, and so it certainly could accommodate more variety of businesses through that corridor there, through there. So we'll have to keep working at it.
Okay?
Okay.
Do you guys want to discuss let's discuss EDZ East a little bit.
Would you like me to move that closer? Would it be easier
Well,
for you to see?
Do you guys want to take a 5-minute recess and just go look at that map real quick and talk through it a little bit so we can go up and look at it? Or do you have any thoughts from here? We could maybe move it closer. What do you think? And then we don't need the recess.
Which one?
The middle one. No,
That one?
sorry, the ones in the middle are not actual.
There we go. That'll be more than that. Is that closer? Can you all see that okay?
That's fine.
Move it forward a little as well. So these labels just says that the Matheson boundary is 1 mile is what's shown, that these corridor boundaries are 1 mile and 1.5 miles, and that these bigger circles are 1.5 miles inner and 2.5 miles outside. It felt real cluttered to add more options than that.
this is 1 mile.
Yes.
This is a mile and
Well, this is a mile radius. So half the distance is a mile. So it's a mile in all directions. Mhm. And this one is 1.5 and 2.5. For the circles. And then we have added a boundary at the intersection here at the county line of I-70 and Highway 24. And there's sort of both of those options right here. Yes. Again, from kind of where this was set, 1.5 radius, again, we could potentially push it over a little bit if that made more sense to you all.
I do like the fact that we're focusing on that eastern side of the county and giving it some thought. I think it's overdue. I'm not thrilled about getting too large on the radius to push unique properties into potentially, off-highway, off-traveled routes, too far back in there. I think, what was the mindset, Dallas, on the original EDZ when you were doing the tracks and the locations of the original one as far as width a few years back when they were setting that up? Do you know, or were you involved in that at all?
I don't know how they came up with that.
Because currently, how wide are they now?
I believe it's a 1/4 mile on each side of the road from the center line.
Okay, I was assuming a 1/2 mile, but that's incorrect.
I think it's 1,300 and
20 feet.
can't do math on the fly here, but it is in the regulations, and I believe it's approximately a quarter mile.
Gotcha. So on the eastern corridor, I wouldn't be opposed to a half mile.
Well, at least.
And that would be doubling the current width of that zone.
And then, dependent, to me, how we define that width also depends on what we do with parcels that are segmented through there.
Is that what we were talking, is that where we ended it last work study session? Where if a lot touches the EDZ zone, the whole lot is now included? I would not be in favor of that.
I think we had just talked about that it would be beneficial to provide specificity. I don't believe that this group really provided direction on which way that would go, because I think we heard varying opinions.
Well, my thought would be, if it's in the zone, it's in the zone. If it's outside the zone, it's outside the zone. You could have someone with a very large parcel where all of a sudden he has a connection, and then we've created this big project outside of our intended use. But by doubling the size, I think that helps. Instead of a quarter mile, we've doubled it to half a mile. And then if you're in that zone, you're in the zone. The rest of your property may or may not be in the EDZ zone. It's the original zoning. I don't know. I think we have to have a line there. That's just my thoughts.
Well, it could prohibit what a person wants to do with their desired business on that. And perhaps a compromise is that becomes a matter of discretion for the CDS director, depending on that how much impact the proposed business would be, whether that gets extended or not.
I could agree with that, because you might have something that's, it's 200 yards outside, or, that kind of thing. I don't know, I would like to see it be a board discretion. When the application came in, if you looked at it, you thought you would recommend it. If you recommended it, we would review it. It would still be up to us to vote on it, or whoever was serving on the board. Or if you felt, hey, this isn't going to work, you didn't recommend it, and you didn't push it forward as an approval. You're recommending approval. So it's still at your discretion to move it forward. But it would be our decision at the end of the day.
So you were talking about a decision beforehand, whether or not it could be in the EDZ, and then,
Well, just how much impact, if Jennifer thinks it makes sense, she does that every day. That's her job, is to recommend approval or denial or recommendations for change. You do that every day, in my understanding. And then you move it forward. If you think it's a viable project, you move it forward to the board. So if you think, hey, it's not that much outside of the EDZ zone, I think this makes total sense, let's go ahead and, I'm going to recommend approval to the board, and we'll see what they say.
I'm assuming it would only be an issue for large parcels where a portion of the parcel is clearly within the boundary and a remaining portion, maybe depending on the shape, is not. And so we could certainly do those on a case-by-case basis, because the site plans do come before the board. But we would, I think applicants certainly prefer if there's any type of, direction or clarity provided in the regulations. But again, there's not right now. So we currently don't have that. And again, I think we had talked a little bit about sort of how it has been operating based on informal policy. So we can certainly go in either direction, but even just having these conversations, I think, is actually very helpful.
Well, I just drew this diagram, and the audience may not see it if we have anybody watching, but you could have a sliver of property touching the EDZ zone going here, and they want to build something way back in here, surrounded by residential or whatever is out there. It could just be pasture land, but they want to build something that doesn't really make sense out there. But they're touching, and it's a big, a big parcel. But so it would be a rare case, I'm sure.
You all could also do, there's all sorts of ways. I agree, we probably don't want to overcomplicate it, but, you could say if at least 50% of the parcel is within the EDZ boundary, you can use the entire parcel with that use, or something like that. So, maybe to avoid something really odd, right, where it's a very small piece. The reverse probably discussion of that would be if the board agrees that these are uses that they do want to incentivize, right, that maybe it doesn't matter if the parcel's, not quite perfect, if it's a use that you all really want to see. There are no easy answers.
Good points. Good point.
No, I'm always in favor of flexibility. I think the more flexibility we can put forth to make things go the direction we'd like to see them go is better. And I know there has to be some common sense that gets put in here. I know government lots of times gets criticized for being rigid and not having any common sense in decisions they made, but because there's this regulation, and even though it doesn't make a bit of sense, this is what we're going to do. And so I like to have a little bit of flexibility there to use common sense and say, yes, this makes sense of what we're doing.
The discretion was Jennifer looks at it, uses her discretion, then the board looks at it and uses our discretion, and we move forward. If it's something that we want to incentivize, we approve it.
Because the board ultimately approves EDZ site plans.
Now, what did you think of her idea about if it's more than 50% or put a number on that? Did you like that at all, Dallas? That was an interesting concept I hadn't thought of,
I
but
would,
that's a rigid line.
yeah, I would be hesitant for it to be a hard and fast rule, but that might be a policy that Jennifer implements.
kind of a guide, maybe?
Internal guide for herself and her staff. It says, we'd really like to see, 50%. But again, having that flexibility, so if it's something that we super duper want,
I
to be
agree.
able to go through there.
I agree.
To have that.
And of course, applicants can always, right, request to move forward, even if, if there's staff concerns or something like that. So they felt certain that they could get that approval, and we could certainly bring that forward and just point out, by the way, only whatever percent, 20% of this parcel is technically within the EDZ. However, we
It's a
wanted to bring this
desirable
forward.
project.
Right.
Let's move it forward.
There's nobody around it, and
Yeah.
Right.
it's just grazeland around it, grassland.
So,
Yeah.
we typically don't see so many EDZ applications that,
Especially out there.
especially out there. Correct. So,
Never.
and the narrowing the list also, I do
Well,
feel like really helps.
And then I think by widening it a little bit from, if it's a quarter mile on each side with a half mile total, if we widened it to a half mile on each side, which I said I wouldn't be opposed to a 1 mile, I think that would help too. You're going to get more of that property in that zone.
So Commissioner Buck, I believe what I'm hearing is that you prefer the inner boundary that's shown along those
Yeah,
corridors of
Correct.
approximately a mile.
correct.
And then, what about the circles?
Yeah, that's next.
Commissioner Schroeder, did you have a preference on the width of the corridors,
Well, I'm in favor of making it big, but
the wider?
if we have that understanding that, just because it's not 100%, a parcel's not 100% in there, we still have that flexibility. We could probably make that work. But I would be in favor of a bigger circle around the the exits off of I-70. We definitely want that, and around around Simla, around the confluence there of 24 and 70. That's really where we need to be attracting things, and the bigger landing spot that people have to put these in, the better off we are, I think.
Those larger ones are 2.5 miles radius, is what I'm reading.
That's correct.
And then the inner circle, 1.5 mile radius.
Yes, sir.
And then the one by Matheson is a 1 mile radius, just to
Yes, sir.
refresh myself.
Matheson was just so small, it felt like a little more, like it made sense. We wanted to have it.
Poor little
but-
Matheson.
I know.
So let me ask you, in the previous EDZ zone location, was there any circle or any radius, or was it just?
No, it was just.
It's just the quarter mile on each side along the corridor? Okay. So I think it's a good idea to have a circle and do a radius and try to attract more businesses to those towns. I also think we should try to attract, and I'm going to bring it up in our next meeting, residential to those towns as well. So I think they want growth out there. You know, I don't know how compatible the EDZ zone is with residential. I think we need both. So I'm not sure, having said that, what size that circle should be.
So as the EDZ is currently written, and I don't think we've really talked about changing this part of it, you're allowed to use your underlying zoning or the EDZ overlay or both. That's how it currently reads. So by having the EDZ overlay, you do not lose any potential land uses. You only gain potential land uses.
Yeah.
I just thought that might be helpful.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is create business or commercial areas or zones, if you will, and residential, not necessarily kind of a jumping back and forth and kind of a mix, unless it's actually a mixed community, you know, a mixed development. But that would be my concern there, Dallas, is that we set that up. The larger we get outside of the central town, by creating it larger, it might create that scenario, if that makes any sense to you. So you have a business inside of a residential area here, and then 2 streets over, you have another gas station, or you have, you know, a restaurant in a residential area. So what I'm trying to do is keep it right around town center with the commercial, and then residential growth as well. And I don't know how that would affect it by the size of that.
You're not going to see a lot of residential growth out here for a variety of reasons. One is the distance from any other place of business. But there, as we get further east in the county, water becomes more of an issue. By the time we get out there, where we're showing by Agate and the circle by I-70 and 24, we're pretty much down to just the Laramie Fox Hills aquifer. And at that point, even there, it's shallower. So the idea that you're going to be able to have a larger, I don't know what number you're thinking of there, is what constitutes a development out there. The infrastructure and the water is going to be an issue.
Oh, what I was hoping was Simla, maybe, would be
We
the
know
only
they
one
got
that I had in
problems.
mind. And once we had clean water in Simla, and we took care of that issue, they might be able to attract some, is what the hope would be. And with that additional residential development, maybe some commercial.
And I'll just add that for Simla specifically, the incorporated portion of Simla is shown in white, and so this would not be applicable there. They would still go through the town process. So perhaps more residential would be within the town limits, I don't know. But just to point that out, obviously that doesn't apply for Agate or Matheson because they're not incorporated. But even the same on that other map, right? The town of Elizabeth, town of Kiowa are shown in white because our regulations don't apply there.
So I think if you were to have even a medium-sized development come in around Simla, I would imagine they would do what the ones up here are doing and having their own water treatment facility, particularly if Simla is still not up to where everybody would expect it to be. They would just take care of their own again.
So would a compromise versus the mile versus the 2.5, would a compromise be the 1.5 miles?
Yeah, probably. Again, with that flexibility to extend on if we need,
Yeah,
if it's
I agree.
desirable.
For the circles.
Yeah,
So the
mile and a half, the inner circle.
inner circle is
Yeah,
and the outer circle is 2.5.
yeah, and then well, and then you had the mile. The mile, so I'm saying a mile and a half would be a good compromise, and I think that's a good, fairly good sized radius considering we had nothing before, other than a zone half the size of what we're suggesting along the routes, along the highways. So we're doubling the size of the zone on the highway, and then we're creating a mile and a half radius around the towns. And then we're also adding something by the intersection there. So I think that's pretty solid. What do you think, Dallas? Sound good?
Yeah.
Dallas is shaking his head.
Like I said, as long as we have that flexibility, it probably works.
Okay.
I agree.
And certainly if something, so unusual were to come in that we haven't thought about at all, there still can go through the zoning process.
Correct.
So it's not prohibited because that's
I'm
not.
going to give you some direction real quick, just for future use. If you see anything close, call us. Let us know.
Noted. With the discussion that we've had so far, and I know there's only two of you today, but would you all feel comfortable with this being potentially before you for a vote on the 17th, which is when it was continued to at yesterday's meeting, because we hadn't had today's meeting?
Well, I think we can come to an agreement for EDZ East. Sounds like we're pretty much agreeable there. The one that we haven't decided was the central zone, whether we want to do that now, whether we want to do that later. One of the reasons I'm hesitant is because our initial goal was to, and direction from the Planning Commission was to eliminate it
Sure.
in its entirety because of lack of transparency. Now, we all know we want some commercial. I was originally in favor of eliminating it because I didn't like the lack of transparency. But if we have knocked the uses down considerably, and I think everybody can agree on some of these uses, I think it's something that we can involve the public with in our public meeting. Was it the 17th? And they can chime in on it as well and give us their feedback. But, and we can make changes. If someone says, what about this? We can add it on that day. We can say, hey, with the exception of this ad.
Of course.
Or what have you. So if it comes to that, we can do that. But I wouldn't be in favor of adding an additional zone at this time, not that I wouldn't be later as that zone builds out.
And I would add as I guess just a reminder that whatever you all were to decide, if you decided to approve something on the 17th, right, I would work with Lance to make sure that we get it all handled properly. And then as the comp plan continues to progress, future land use plan continues to progress, I would fully anticipate that at some point in the future,
Changes
whether
will be
that's
made.
6 months or whether that's a year or whether that's 18 months, I would expect some maybe fairly significant zoning regulation changes, whether that's a complete overhaul or whether that's changes simply to be reflective of the direction that the comp plan provides. So I just say that to say nothing is forever.
Yeah. I kind of want to see what, if any, positive changes we get from the changes we make.
Oh, sure.
So what results, I should say, if we have this out there, we're trying to attract businesses to certain areas of the county, let's see what results we get before we start adding more or taking any away. I think with the new uses, I think we're fine.
Sounds like Byron will have to have a discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And I do have the notes that he provided at the last meeting. It did sound like he was potentially open to the central. So we can, I can work with Lance and we can see if it makes sense to bring some options. Perhaps, Lance, I'm not sure if you feel comfortable weighing in on that now. Is that something that would be realistic?
I think we could. I'd like to see what it looks like on paper, but Jennifer, I think you and I could take a stab at what that might look like. But I think it's probably consistent with the types of changes that have been discussed, such that the board could ultimately make a decision on it if we had something finite.
Okay.
In other words, could we have two potential maps? One that only has an east and a west, and one that has three areas? And then, ideally with no additional changes, just kind of picking A or B?
Yeah, I think we could. I think we would want to, I haven't looked for a while now at the original notice that teed this up for the board, and we've continued it a number of times to get it to this point. I would want to make sure that notice was inclusive of maps, but certainly if maps is part of what's being considered or what's part of what's been noticed, it doesn't matter if there's alternate choices, that's fine. So whether there's 2 zones or 3, that's not going to be problematic.
Okay, so we'll have to work on that piece of it.
Did you have anything else, Dallas?
Nope.
How about you, Jennifer?
I don't believe so. If you all note anything that seems to be a issue or a contradiction, please let me know.
Okay.
I have something.
Sure.
So commissioners, I kind of gave you a heads up on this yesterday. I think it's related to this topic. And so I'm going to start to seek some clarity. I don't know if you're ready to give it, but there are a number of things that individual board members want to move forward related to land use regulations and policy. I'll just pick out one so we have an example we can kind of talk through. I know Commissioner Buck has been interested in having a time limit on approvals. Now, I don't know the exact scope of that. Is that if a final plat's approved, there would be a time limit. If zoning changes approved, there'd be a time limit, but either one's a viable option. But my question is, when an individual commissioner has an idea like this, what would the board in total like from county staff? What would the board like from me? What would the board like from Jennifer? So in my one example again for time limits, is a single commissioner able to raise an issue such that staff would be expected to prepare examples to bring forward? And if so, what does bring forward look like? Does that mean bring forward to another staff work session? Does that mean bring forward in a more formal process? Or does it mean it's only an idea? And how does that idea become something more concrete for which the board could ultimately take action? So in concept, I think I am seeking, and I think Jennifer would agree, but I won't speak for her, that having some direction, what the board's expectations are of staff would be really, really helpful so that we're not either pushing something the board's not ready to see or that we're an impediment and we're not bringing forward something the board is wanting to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we just need to agree on a process, is what you're saying. So that
Yeah,
you
it
got.
would be very helpful.
Yeah, so I think the three of us, at some point, maybe it's a discussion during one of our meetings that we say, hey, what should the process be? We discuss it, and we get some direction for you guys so we can be a little bit more in tune to what you guys want to see.
I think there's broader things that we could cover than just this. And if we were able to make a board policy, board procedures that encompass some other issues that we're having along the line here and hammer those out to where we have it written down on paper on what we're doing going forward, I think would be beneficial for everybody.
And I agree. How do we get from here to there? How can staff assist the board to get to where you want to be so that we're in compliance with your agreed upon policies?
Well, maybe the first step is to see if there's other counties that have board policies, procedures, and that way you'd have a template to start working with. I mean, I certainly would have some ideas on things that I'm concerned about, but starting from scratch with 3 different people trying to put their concerns together might be cumbersome. Certainly willing to do that, but if we could find at least some kind of a template other counties are using, it might be beneficial.
Okay. Let me throw out something I know, just so we have a starting point to talk about. Douglas County, for example, is subject to policy governance. What that means is they have committed their board policies to writing, and all staff is expected to be in compliance with those policies. Theirs are very elaborate, far beyond the smaller issue that I've kind of raised today. And my observation is I don't believe Elbert County is prepared to go to a pure policy governance model. The board regularly engages with individual citizens on individual matters, and I don't think the board is in a place to empower staff to do those things for the board. So that's one example of broad policy governance that I think is probably bigger than the board is ready for. But that said, I can certainly get a copy of that policy manual for the board to look at. I'm not aware of other counties that have smaller policies, for lack of a better description, but I can inquire about that I have a county attorney listserv, and I typically get good responses, although the last couple of days I have not been getting responses to my questions, which is unusual. But that said, it's a question as much as it is a statement. I assume this board is not prepared to go quite the direction of a Douglas County, for example. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, I think that's probably right, to a certain degree, whether it's by choice or desire. We want to have that personal feeling with our citizens, but yet somehow we need to be able to be self-restrained also and not overstep. And so I think the first step is for the commissioners to come to an agreement on a policy and a procedure on how those things would look going forward, and being able to hold ourselves accountable to that moving forward, I think would be beneficial. And probably there'd be some downstream effects on the other policies that you perhaps are thinking of that Douglas County does. But if we were more restrained perhaps in what we were doing, it might help those other issues as well.
Right. Okay, well, one of the examples then that I'll bring forward is Douglas County's policy manual, just so you'll have that to look at and see if that meets any of your needs. I will also seek from other counties that are less of a pure policy governance model, what type of individual policies they have on what individual commissioners can bring forward. I think that guidance will help you help us. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be an impediment to what you're working on. I also don't want to advance things that don't have board direction to advance. I'm trying to find what you desire from me without overstepping one way or another.
So Lance, the first example you used was a guideline change, and I think that's what brought this discussion forward. I would like to know how the previous board, what was the policies that they used to advance guideline changes. I know on the Planning Commission, we were brought red line changes. We voted on them, made some maybe minor corrections, maybe not, and then they were approved by the board and moved forward. But so how was that brought forward to the Planning Commission from an idea in the previous administration? We'll just do what they were doing. Sounds like it worked. They were making guideline changes at will whenever they needed to, felt it was a necessary part of the job was to make guideline changes because it is a necessary part of the job from time to time. Whatever they were doing, apparently it worked. Maybe we could just replicate that instead of all of a sudden we're reinventing the wheel and we can't get any policy changes done. So I would like to hear how it was done.
Well,
I would too, Commissioner, but one thing is a little different than I'm told about the previous board. The previous board seemed to agree more than our current board. And that's not intended in any way to be a criticism, but I suspect that if the board had an idea as to a regulatory change, in some form, there was 3 commissioners agreeing with that, and then it becomes very easy for staff to draft or help draft red
No.
lines that actually are regulations that go through process.
No, I understand
I think-
that. I understand that. But what I'm trying to get at is the procedure and the policy that was used to come to that agreement. You said they were in agreement, more likely than not. Well, when they came to agreement, did they discuss it in an open board meeting? And decide
Yeah,
what
well,
guideline changes they wanted to make before they gave it to staff? Did they have a work study session and decide what issues they wanted to bring to staff? Whatever policies and procedures they were using, let's just replicate that and we'll move forward. I don't know why we need to reinvent the wheel. We can discuss it. If we agree on it, we move it forward. If we don't agree on it and we don't have a 2/3 vote, then we don't move it forward. But they had policies and procedures in place prior to get guidelines changes. And they agreed on it, maybe 2-1, I don't know, maybe all 3 of them agreed on it, but they had a process in place to get guideline changes done, and now we apparently do not.
Well, one
Fair enough.
commissioner did not put forth changes, so it was much more a collaborative situation, perhaps informally, perhaps in going through the CDS director with different discussions, but it was not one person thinking, I have an idea and I want this to happen. So there needs to be something that is agreed upon to where at least 2/3 of the board is willing to say that it's worth the investment of our staff and time and expense to move forward with this, whatever the issue is.
The process I'm used to is similar to this work session. An idea would be fleshed out and the board would, at the end, agree that this is an issue that should move forward with staff time or it would not. But some detail has to be fleshed out, what the board would support and what the board would not support. So for example, again, going back to if we had a time limit on approvals, okay, which approvals are we talking about putting a time limit on? What type of time limit would we want to put on those? What happens if that time limit expires and something hasn't moved forward? So to put a finer point on it, let's say a zoning change was approved, and that is one of the things we wanted to put a time limit on. The zoning change is only meaningful if property use changes consistent with that change. And if it doesn't, do we revert back to the previous zoning? And if so, after what period of time? And if we do revert back to the previous zoning, what is the expectation on county staff? Do we bring forward a zoning change? So those are the types of details that need to go into a regulatory change like that. What happens if the time expires and nothing has changed? So what I would envision and what I'm used to is that would come forward to a work session, discussions about what the specifics, what specifics might be acceptable to the board would be discussed. And then at the end, staff would be given a green light to actually draft regulations consistent with the discussion or not. But that works only if it works for the board.
Well, my understanding was we had discussed it. I thought it was a work session. Maybe it wasn't a work session. But those ideas had been presented, and we had discussed them. There was no objection to them. Moved it over to the staff. I was instructed that the staff, the CDS director, was the collector of some of these ideas and was going to be the director of coordinating these ideas from the BOCC and the Planning Commission, and then they would be brought forward.
Yeah, I apologize if I missed it. Was there
So I think we got a little bit, fine tune it a little bit, it sounds like.
Agreed. And if I missed the types of specifics I'm talking about, I apologize. But it's one thing to have an idea to have time limits. It's a whole nother thing to
No,
discuss what that means in practice.
That was just a discussion item for us that was listed, and it wasn't probably on an appropriate list. That should have been just something that, hey, this needs to be brought forward and fleshed out. And what I was trying to avoid there was someone coming in 20 years later and say, hey, I have this approval and you have to honor it when everything in the county has changed. The rest of our regulations have changed, the easements have changed, the allowable land uses in the vicinity have changed. So we get these applications from the 70s or from, 2007. There's a couple of years that come to mind where all of a sudden they come in and say, hey, I'm entitled and, I can do whatever I want based on these old regulations. So I want to make sure that they're aware that if they bring something forward that was approved years ago, hey, they got to either reapply, they have to account for all of the new regulations that are in place, the new fees that are in place. I just don't think our guidelines expand on it enough. That's all I'm saying. And that was just supposed to be an item for us to discuss and see what we wanted to do moving forward with that topic. So it was vague.
Right. But that's the reason for this conversation. It was vague to me as well. What would you expect staff to do now to take that idea and turn it into something that goes through process or dies?
No,
I don't
what
think
I want-
staff feels
what-
strongly.
Yeah, what I wanted to do with that, it was just a note that I had. It was just a note, and what I wanted to do was create a conversation, kind of like what we're having now, and say, hey, is there an opportunity for any of those time-sensitive documents or approvals so that we can eliminate it? Maybe a preliminary plat, don't we have something in the guidelines now that a preliminary plat is 12 months, something like that? Yeah, I wanted to just kind of review that and make sure our guidelines was where we wanted them to be in that regard. That's all.
Okay.
But good example. Good example.
I just picked one example so that we could flesh out what the process may look like. So I'm not picking on it. It's
No,
a
that's
fine
okay.
idea.
Yeah. But I'm happy to do a work study session. I'm happy to do it in a BOCC meeting. However, we want to bring forward ideas. But we're here 10 months on the job, going on a year here, and we have not been able to change or make one guideline or regulation change since my administration started or my term started back in January. So there's a problem with the system, and we haven't been told how it's supposed to work apparently because we're not able to get anything done. So we need to do it in a BOCC meeting. I'll do it there.
Right. Well, the same idea in a BOCC meeting leads me to the same questions. So that's why we're having this discussion. I'm not trying to kill any of your ideas, not even close. I'm just trying to figure out what the board would like the attorney's office to do and presumably Jennifer's office to do
Well,
when these ideas come up.
we
And
need
it
a
sounds
two-
like work sessions.
Well, we need a 2/3 vote to move something
I'm
forward.
not sure what the board would vote on at this point, other
No,
than,
not,
yes, it's
not,
a good
on-
idea.
not on that particular item, but some of the other issues. I'm talking in general, a guideline change, any guideline change, we need a 2/3 vote. So I thought there was a process that we gave those ideas to Jennifer. Jennifer runs them through the planning commission. Planning commission was more than welcome per our guidelines, as we are, as the planning director and planning staff is. They are told in the guidelines, hey, you can move ideas forward. That's what our guidelines say. Then we vote on it. So if we're doing it wrong, let me know. We can do it however you want to do it.
Well,
As far
just the opposite. We'll do it however the board wants to do it.
Yeah, well, I want to do it legally, so that's why I said it that way. I want to make sure we're not doing it behind closed doors. I want to make sure we're doing it right, and I want to get some things changed.
Would it be helpful if we had a, sort of, I'm going to say standing, but I don't truly mean standing, once a quarter work session that is sort of open-ended for these types of discussions?
Like a work study session, you mean, for guidelines?
For guidelines or internal policies, or, hey, I really hate the way that's, whatever direction the board wanted to provide for legal and CDS. Or we could ask, I guess, at a, once a quarter regular meeting, if that's preferred.
We might not want to wait a quarter, though. We might want to start them sooner rather than later. I don't want to wait till March of next year before we start, if we're going to do it.
No,
If we're going to
understood,
do it
but
every quarter,
I
I
just
would
meant if you were
rather start
expecting
and
to
then
have
make.
like for a year, we could kind of look forward and plan for
Well, if
maybe
we're,
with them every month. I don't know.
yeah, they might be every month because with the comprehensive plan coming to an end here shortly, and we're going to be working on our rules and regulations, there may be a need to have it more than once a quarter.
Monthly.
Start with one.
Well, it depends on how extensive you are, because that can be pretty time inclusive as well, and with all the notices and everything that go out, it may be, I don't know, it may be too much to try and do something every month.
Yeah, but you could have one, see how you feel, and then say, hey, next month we don't need to. You can kind of play that by ear, I think, for sure, after you have the first one. But I think we're looking at, if I had my wish, is that we do a rewrite of our rules and regulations, since we're talking about rules and regulations. Lance, our county attorney, is recommending them. Jennifer, our CDS director, is recommending it. I'm recommending it. I seriously think we need to look at doing that. What do you think of that, Dallas?
Well, I think the first thing we need to tackle is the 1041s, and particularly with battery storage, with what we've been hearing coming down the pike. I think that is, to me, the most urgent thing that we need to address. And I know Mike's got some templates from some other counties that we can work on, but that, to me, is, as far as rules and regs change, to me, that is the priority, since we know that we have some that are going to be coming before us.
Hey, Dallas, the ones I have are solar and battery storage, so I think we add the solar piece too, because as far as I know, we don't have the solar piece either.
Yeah, we need to be all encompassing in that.
Okay, well, let's take that as an example. The two of you seem to agree that you want to see regulations related to battery storage and potentially solar. Would you like Jennifer and I to locate some examples of what other counties have done and bring them forward to a work session?
That's a good idea. I have one example already from Lincoln County that I think I forwarded by email to Jennifer. Did I send you a copy, Dallas? So Dallas has a copy as well. I don't know if I sent it to you, Lance. We can certainly get you a copy to look at. They're very basic, but I think they may come close to working with a few changes. It shouldn't be that hard. If you think they're adequate, I think it would be very easy to get those added in.
Right, well, this goes back to my procedural question, though. I believe you that when you say you've looked at them and they might be close to adequate, that's probably the case. I'm still looking for direction from the board to bring them forward or not. My suggestion was to bring you several examples. You're ready to move forward with one specific example
No.
in some way. I'm okay with any of this.
No,
just need
I was
clarity.
say, I didn't say we move forward with it. I say we have you review it. If you have some other examples that you want to review as well or can bring forward, I brought one forward. If you feel we need to get two or three, which is probably a good idea, we get two or three examples, and then maybe we combine parts of one with parts of another and get some ideas, so we're not starting from scratch and reinventing the wheel. I think that might be the best. If you can get us some more examples, that'd be great.
I agree.
Okay,
What else? Anything else?
not for me.
Okay.
For the EDZ topic that we started with, I'm just circling back. We're okay to bring some potential actual changes to that meeting that's already been scheduled,
Yeah, I think so.
based on the direction
Yeah.
from I think there were 4 total work sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and whether or not it'll be what we want, we don't know yet, but
And, you can always talk to Byron one-off
course.
and see where he's at, and kind of
okay.
give you a good idea where the direction would be.
Okay, so we will plan to bring those, and I will work with Lance, and we will work on scheduling a work session for these particular topics regarding solar and battery storage and 1041s, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in that work session, I'm going to bring up the ideas that I want to bring forward and see if I can get support from the board. If
So we can
we're-
make it a little bit more general, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure. So should we close out this work study session?
Unless Lance needs anything?
No, he said he didn't have anything else.
This has been helpful, though. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Dallas. Let's go ahead.